Boom. This is a perfect one-to-one replica map of Thea Sky Ruins. And first, what I'm going to do is kind of explain how team compositions work in Pokemon Unite for the upcoming regionals tournament. So June 10th and 11th, this weekend, is going to be Pokemon Unite regionals for every single region that's played in the West. So NA, EU, all of Latin America, OCE as well. And then the finals for North America, instead of being on the 11th, will be on July 30th or June 30th to July 1st. But yeah, now I'm going to be leaking pretty much all of my team strats and all the other team strats, so you guys know exactly how to expect what's going to go down. It's pretty simple. To be honest, Pokemon Unite's not that complicated how the meta is right now. You pretty much want to have a tank on each side in the bottom lane. You know, Slowbro. Let's go with Trevenant, pretty common ones. You want to have 2 light bulbs per team, so each of the tank is going to have a light bulb here. The other light bulb's going to go top, right? And the top lane supports, there's pretty much 2 of them in the meta. It's Hoopa and Eldegoss. Okay? So every team comp is going to have something like this, pretty much 70 to 90% of games. You should expect something like this. A defender in the bottom lane, a supporter in the top lane, both with X-Feature on. Now, to round out the damage dealers in each lane, you know, you're generally going to have attackers that have some kind of burst. You know, Mew is one of the best ones. It always has been. And it'll continue to be. And there's a bunch of attackers. Espeon lately was pretty popular. This lane, Tree Espeon was really popular, but both these characters have been nerfed. So it's not as good, but it's still fine. Top side, usually you'll have like an all-rounder kind of character. A tanky character. You know, Luca used to be the most popular top laner. Now you see like a lot of Buzzwole, which I expect a decent amount. And what else? Let's say Garchomp, you know? Sometimes people play Garchomp top lane. Any kind of tanky character normally you'll have here, something that has good laning, something that can help, you know, scale your composition, something to take advantage of the fact you have a supporter up here. Doesn't, you know, it depends on the meta, what'll be strong. Garchomp's all right. You might expect to see some other characters there. And then in the jungle, right now the meta is really speedster heavy. So you might expect to see a lot of speedsters, maybe like a Zoroark in the jungle on one side. You could say like an Urshifu, like a water bear Urshifu in one side. Not saying that this is a comp overall you would expect, but this is what the breakdown of games is generally going to look like, okay? And then from there, the junglers have, you know, their option to gank. A lot of times they'll go top side. People are stacking attack weights up here, you know? So you'll see a battle for whoever can win on the top side harder to whoever can get their attack weight stacks up. Bottom side, they're just fighting to get their experience. Then what you'll see is a lot of times a 4v4 fight in the bottom lane. Something like this, you know? When the objective's up down here, usually it'll be 4v4 fighting for it. The top laners are going to be top, preventing each other from stacking. You know, the stacks might be on Zoroark, so you know, the Urshifu might stay top to get stacked if it didn't. Some variation of this. And then they're going to go continue to scale up as the pads go down. Different variations of different objectives will have priority until you get to the end game where you have a 5v5 fight. Whoever did better throughout the game is going to be higher level at the Rayquaza fight. And depending on how the compositions are drafted, you know, some teams are going to be a little bit more favored into other teams. But overall, it's going to come down to whoever plays the team fight better and whoever is higher XP. Hoopa left, yeah, they left their XP shares up there. Let's bring them back for them. Why support top and tank bottom? The tank generally is going to have better secure. So the tank having better secure means that they have, you know, a good shot at getting the farm. The farm's generally tankier down here. Your bottom pad, a lot of times, you know, is pretty important to keep up and it's harder to push into the tank, so it's good. But you could definitely, like, there's no big reason why you couldn't have a support down here. You do want to have a tanky character though, just so you can pull stuff into the bushes, take good trades. So generally, because the farm's tankier, you want to have a tank bottom, but you don't need to. As long as you have a range and a melee in each lane, you're generally chilling. So yeah, that's pretty much what you'll expect gameplay-wise. Obviously, there's a lot of individual moments that happen and whatnot. But basics of Pokemon Unite competitive meta, that's what to expect, right? In terms of the picks to expect, that's what the tier list that I wanted to do is for today. The tiers that I have set up, meta defining. So these are the characters that you should expect to see picked or banned in most Pokemon games. Most of these characters will be picked or banned. You might not see the entire pick and ban phase only have these characters, but the characters you see will be a result of the meta defining characters. Then you have characters that are in the meta, you know, maybe not absolute first picks, but, you know, alternatives if the character in the role that you wanted was picked or banned, a different character, maybe like slightly different strategies from what the meta is. This is what you'll expect there. Some sleeper picks, characters I think that are strong, but not necessarily meta worthy strong, but still characters you'll see get played. Not great, you know, characters that just have been falling behind in terms of stats or meta. Like a not great character I'll put up right now, Tyranitar, easily, right? Not great character. And then the ones that are banned. These characters have been banned because they were bugged when the qualifiers were happening. A lot of the bugs are fixed now, but because they were banned for the qualifiers and the practice leading up to the tournament, they're going to stay banned. Or because they were just released too quickly. Like Leafeon came out very recently, it's not going to be playable. Umbreon is still too recent because it was banned for the qualifiers. We might see it at NAIC though, which is finals for North America. Cramorant, the bug only recently got fixed, so that's still banned. Zacian is still OP, so that's why that's banned. And I think that's it for the banned characters. There are characters that have moveset banned, so both Glaceon and Clefable are banned because I have Follow Me banned and Icicle Spear banned because those moves were also bugged and they just got fixed. But that's pretty much it. We'll start with the meta defining picks. I'll do like 2 Pokemon per role, like the 2 strongest, and then we'll just keep that format going, right? I think the easiest ones that I can say are Hoopa and Eld. They fill that top lane support role that I was talking about, where you want to have that range character. Generally, the Hoopa or the Eld will take the red buff. So in the early game, you know, a lot of times what you'll see people do is you'll have something like this, something like this. And because you have XP share on, you maintain all the XP, even if you take the last hit. So the Hoopa will take the red buff, you know, the Eldegoss will take the red buff, and they'll harass each other's top laners with the red buff, making their life really annoying while they keep all their HP, right? And Hoopa and Eld are the best sports to do that with. So that's a big reason why they're popular, but their kits overall are really, really, really strong. Hoopa can reset your entire team with portals. Eld can reset their entire team with ult. Palm Puff, Cotton Guard, the range harass from both of them. Really, really good. Next set of characters, maybe we'll do defenders. Slowbro, it pretty much answers all the speedsters that are in the meta right now. And characters like Zoroark or Shifu, Dojo, all are really, really popular right now. So Slowbro handles them really well. It's really strong in the lane. You'll see a lot of Slowbro. Trevenant, I would say, was one of the defenders that was probably meta defining until they got nerfed. Still a strong character. The other defender is Lapras. Lapras hasn't gotten that big Bubble Beam nerf that's about to happen in a couple weeks. Maybe next week, hopefully. But right now, it's just too tanky. It's really, really hard to bring down. So Unite move gives you map mobility, kind of like Hoopa does. So just both really good characters. Even Lapras doesn't have to be played in the defender role. You could see Lapras fulfill that top lane role where I was showing you guys there's Buzzwoles and Zoroarks and Lucarios. Dojiro can go up there. Lapras is a really good character for that spot. The other thing you'll see is a lot of speedsters. Things that why Slowbro exists is to counter speedsters like Zoroark and Dodrio. These characters, Dodrio has gotten some nerfs. It's expecting another big nerf, but it has too much map mobility. It's too quick. It has incredible sustain. It can get really tanky with Eos Cookie. Same idea with Zoroark. Just has a lot of burst. It's really fast around the map. It's really, really strong immediately at level 5. So if you do give them the jungle, they'll be really strong, but they're good in the lane as well. They can go top path, they can go central, they can go wherever. In the realm of speedster or speedster-esque kind of Pokemon, you also have Urshifu. Water Bear Urshifu plays a lot like the other speedsters in the game. It can dive you, it can sustain, it can get really far ahead the moment you go to level 5. Just really, really, really strong. The other all-rounder is Buzzwole. Probably moves up a category or a tier from last tournament. Team YouTube picked it a lot in NA. It's been popular in EU for a while. They won the last tournament with it. You see a lot of teams in Europe have success with it. It's a good character into the other speedsters. It can one-shot a lot of range characters if you can get on top of them. So probably one of the best all-rounders in the game. And then the only role we're missing here is the attacker role. And I think for the attacker role, meta-defining wise, it's probably only Mew. Again, you know, the meta-defining characters kind of center around themselves. Mew's the best attacker into the speedsters. Mew's the only attacker in the game pretty much that has burst damage, mobility, and some form of invincibility, right? Invincibility through their Unite, mobility through Surf and Agility and Coaching, and burst with Beam and E-Ball. No other, I mean, rightfully so, Mew's meant to have, you know, supposed to be a jack of all trades, but it's just that strong. So yeah, Mew can do it all. There are other good attackers though, so we'll talk about other characters that are in the meta. And I think these characters might end up becoming meta defining. But there's so many good attackers like Alola Ninetales and Chandelure that I think, you know, beyond these two, there's some other really good ones. We'll talk about them shortly. I think the attacker pool is kind of saturated after Mew, and it really ends up just depending on matchups that you have. The reason why these two in particular are really strong is they can have decent matchups into some of the meta-defining characters. Particularly Chandelure, if you go Imprison, good answer into Zoroark. Depending on which moveset Dojo is, it can be troublesome for Dojo to deal with it, but it deals with Zoroark a little bit. It can definitely deal with Urshifu, especially if they're Water Bear. It can be annoying for Buzzwole. It's really good at hitting the popular defenders as well. So Chandelure is a character that's strong because of the circumstances and because it's good. And it might end up becoming meta-defining in the following tournament. But I think for now, it's easy to say that these characters control the meta and Chandelure looks to kind of counter them. In terms of defenders, we can talk about those again. Another pair of defenders that are still really strong. Trevenant and Snorlax. Tree got some nerfs, so it's not the best right now. And then Lapras also came out, where Lapras kind of overtook its role as like this really unkillable, you know, high sustain, high HP, CC control tank. Lapras is just a better version of Tree in a lot of respects to that. But, you know, not all games are going to have Lapras available. And there's going to be situations where you might call to want to have a Tree on your team. It's not bad into some of the speedsters. It can knock them around. It's good stuns for them. The attackers can kind of deal with it, but with Pain Split, you know, you have some options. Overall, Tree's a pretty good character. Definitely still in the meta. If we look at some of the other roles, we can talk about all-rounders. I think in the all-rounder tab, there's probably not a lot of meta all-rounders. I think Garchomp, and you know, we'll put Machamp in there as well, because Machamp's seen some increased usage in North America. It's still pretty popular in EU. There's some teams that, you know, have been running Machamp all season, and it's a meta character in their region. I've seen other regions pick some Machamp. Garchomp as well. It can be that, you know, top laner if other things are banned out. It does struggle into some of the attackers, especially if they get ahead. Like A9 can be a real big problem for Garchomp. But, you know, the draft is going to play out the way it does. You might not want to pick Garchomp into A9, but if you see a good draft line for it, you could be going for the Garchomp. Let's pick another role. We can talk about supporters here. Another clean pair of supporters are put together are Blissey and Clefable. They both have really, really good pairings and matchups into some of the meta-defining characters. Like, you'd love a Blissey Unite on any of the speedsters or even Urshifu. And you love to have gravity into a lot of these characters as well. But because you're only going to typically have one supporter per team, the roles that Hoopa and Eltufil are just a little bit too good to say that these characters define the meta, but they still have really useful tools. So a lot of disruption, a lot of healing, a lot of sustain, and they're tanky as well. They can serve as pretty decent front lines. So they're good, not amazing though. I think I'll throw in Sableye. This might not be particularly in the meta, and maybe we'll put at the top of Sleeper, but I think this is a character that we might end up seeing play out at regionals. It hasn't gone the really big HP and attack nerf that people are expecting it to get yet. And it's honestly a really annoying character for a lot of the draft to deal with. And if supporters are going to be, you know, Hoopa and Eld, and Sableye doesn't have to deal with the sustainability that these two characters can provide, I think we'll see some Sableye in the tournament, but I'll put it at the top of the sleeper tier. So what else do we have? Let's pick another role. Speedsters. What are other speedsters I would say on the meta? Talonflame, probably. Talonflame's a decent answer into some of the attackers that exist in the meta. It's decent into Mew. It can have some problems into characters like Chandelure. But if it gets far enough ahead and you can do significant damage off just your fly alone, you can really punish a lot of the squishy range attackers as well. It's a good option if some of the other speedsters aren't available because they've been banned or picked out. And, you know, we've seen it in pretty much every region at some point during the year pop up and have some success. EU has had a couple teams use it to their success. NA has had a couple teams. I've even seen it get picked in OCE sometimes. I don't follow the Central America, Latin America scene that much, but I think I've seen them mess around with Talon there as well. Finally, we have attackers. I think there's a lot of attackers that are in the meta, and they end up all just becoming draft dependent. So there's, you know, things like Decidueye and Gardevoir that are, you know, your long range attackers. Gardevoir a lot better at dealing with frontline tanks. Decidueye a lot better at dealing with other ranged attackers that don't outrange it, but Guard can do the same thing. Decidueye can be well into Guard. So it really just depends on matchups. Another pair that, you know, we've seen, or not a pair, but another set of two characters, Venusaur popped up a lot. My team picked it a lot through the qualifiers, but, you know, we saw YouTube run it in their last tournament run. We've seen other teams run it. Beam Venusaur just outranges the other range characters, but it does struggle a lot into speedsters, so you have to be careful. Alongside Venusaur, you know, Pikachu's definitely had some pickup. Delphox, Espeon. These are all characters that, you know, depending on the matchups that they're facing, they can be really, really strong. Volt Tackle Pikachu, annoying for some speedsters to deal with. Psybeam Stored Power Espeon, moveset that hasn't really been nerfed. It does a lot of spread damage, can deal with the tanks very decently well. It's not awful into Dodrio. Delphox, character that, you know, is kind of fallen off a little bit, but still, Delphox Unite on the back of a Slowbro Unite, pretty much anything in the game will be dead there. It's decent at the dealing into enemy tanks. Even Fire Spin, Delphox can be really annoying for some all-rounders to deal with. It's got a lot of control in its build, which makes it pretty strong. You might be wondering why I don't have something like Glaceon listed. Like I said, Icicle Spears is banned, so with just Icy Wind, I wouldn't put it in the meta, but it's definitely around there in the sleeper tier. You'll see it get picked with Icy Wind every now and then. It's a level 4 evolution, which makes it strong in the early game. Speaking of evolutions, Sylveon, this character bounces in and out of the meta. It does struggle into a lot of the meta-defining speedsters, but it's really strong into the meta-defining tanks. So Slowbro and Lapras definitely don't like being hyper-voiced down by a Sylveon. And if you have something else to punish them with the Sylveon's hyper-voice shred, you can do a lot of damage to frontline tanks. But again, it struggles a lot into speedsters. And, you know, it's going to be picked in games where it has good opportunities to succeed. Other than that, I think characters people wanted to see in this tier are maybe Blastoise. I think you'll expect to see some Blastoise. It's going to depend on the region. In North America, you might not see it as much, but I think in, you know, especially in Brazil, I see them still favoring some Blastoise, at least from my experience. Latin America, Mexico, a lot of those regions, you'll see some Blastoise. In Europe, you'll see some Blastoise get picked, either as Spin Blastoise or Surf Blastoise. It's not awful into the meta, but, you know, a character like Lapras serves its job a lot better than it. And there's so many other stronger top lane characters that you're not going to see a lot of Blastoise fill in that role. If you think about it, right, Blastoise is a defender that has two builds. It has its all-rounder build in the Spin Blastoise, which is kind of, you know, what Lapras can do with Whirlpool, Water Pulse, whatever it's called. It can live really long and do AoE damage. It can stun a team not as good of an ult for sure. Or it plays the defender role with Pump and Surf, which Trevenant kind of does better. You know, you Horn Leech them like Surf. Woodhammer is, you know, comparable to Hydro Pump, sometimes even better. And it's just a way tankier version of the character. So I'm not a big fan of Blastoise per se, but you'll definitely see some of it. And it's fair to call it a meta character. Rapid Spin Blastoise did get the bug fix, so it is going to be allowed with Water Spout. All right, I think that probably is going to conclude what's like meta. I would say between meta defining and in the meta, this is probably going to be, you know, 80 to 90% of the games that you watch will have almost all of these characters, or at least, you know, 3 to 4 per side. Let's talk about some sleeper characters. Now, these are characters that I think are strong, right? They're definitely strong enough to be played, but they either, one, have a counterpart in their role that just does more things or things better than them, or they're just not up to par enough, right? Like, maybe they have a niche, but that niche isn't good enough to justify being played, at least in the meta. See a lot of Wiggly and Mime. These are characters I think exist here. You know, Wiggly Unite, definitely unique in that it's not a damage or CC Unite, which is what most defenders do. Just completely shields and heals your team, because it does end up playing like a, doesn't heal, shields and unstoppable some. So I think it is a strong character, but it's contesting the role between these 4 defenders right here, Slowbro, Lapras, Treven, and Snorlax. Most times, one of these 4 characters will fulfill Wiggly and by extension Mime's role a little bit better. Mime, you know, if there was more than just Bruv, I would say it's in the meta. But of the teams that, you know, I'm used to watching, I'm used to expecting, I would say it's not really in the meta. But because of Bruv, you know, you'll definitely see this get picked. You know, if Noun's up against the wall, I think Bruv will make the hero call, put me on Mime, and I'll 1v5. So I think it'll stay around. Let's look at all-rounders. So Lucario, you know, it's a shame that he's not considered in the meta right now, but he's just not really seeing a lot of picks. I think you will see some of it, but like I said, the other all-rounders in other regions just get picked a lot more. Buzzwole does a lot of Lucario's job. The only thing Buzzwole doesn't do is it doesn't have as great of a last hit, but Wicked Blow or Shifu is just better at last hitting than Pup Lucario. E-Speed Lucario is kind of outclassed by a lot of other things, but Lucario's like the all-rounder of all-rounders. It's like, it's just good enough at everything it does that it'll never not be meta. It'll never not be playable, but it might not always be meta, but it'll always be playable. In terms of other all-rounders, I don't really see anything else I would consider sleeper. I could say Scizor can be up here. Scizor, let's talk about both Scizor and Scyther. We'll start with Scizor. If you're playing into like 4 or 5 physical attack-based carries, or damage dealers in general, Scizor's defense boost from its boosted auto can be relevant, but Scizor definitely has its problems. It doesn't have a good last hit, and characters in this role, in this all-rounder role, are oftentimes required to be the last hitters, you know? Urshifu, Lucario, even Buzzwole, Dojo Jopek's a decent last hit. You know, Zoroark's last hit of Feint Attack can be a good last hit. Its Unite can be a good last hit. Scizor doesn't really have anything that does a lot of burst, but it's really good at staying alive. So I think it'll see some play for sure. It might rise the ranks, but it does struggle into a lot of the meta attackers, which are getting picked a lot, right? Like Chandelure, A9, Mew, all of them can be really annoying for Scizor. But if Scizor manages to find a lead, I think you'll see some of it get played. Charizard, I think you might expect it. I think it's good enough to get played. The problem with Zard is that you need level 9. And this meta is way too defined by characters that have spikes at 5, 7, and 8. Right? All the speedsters immediately at level 5 become incredibly powerful. So many of the attackers become really strong at 5. Mew, Guard even, Chandelure's like incredibly strong at 5. Then you have mons that even scale at level 4, like the Evolutions, right? Evolutions and A9. Which ends up making Charizard just fall behind so hard. You know, these characters start to get level 7, they're unlocking really powerful moves, their stats are maxed out almost. Most of your characters end up getting their Unites at level 8 nowadays. And Zard as a Charmeleon level 8 at the first objective fight just isn't enough. And it doesn't have enough tools to get itself to 9 as well. So I think, I would say it's almost not great, but we'll put it in the sleeper tier. We might see some Zard play. Let's move roles again. Let's talk about attackers. So we have Glaceon here. Glaceon, I think, because Ice Spears is banned, Icy Wind's just not what it used to be, and characters are just way too mobile around the map for Glaceon to be able to catch up in fights. It definitely struggles, and Icy Wind not being that one-shot combo anymore because of the damage nerfs definitely hurts it as well. It's getting some more nerfs in that build with Freeze Dry getting nerfed, so I'm not sure how popular Glaceon's going to be moving forward after the nerfs, but for this tournament, you'll see some played for sure. In terms of attack damage carries, though, right? Cinderace, Greninja, Dragapult, these type of characters, they're, you know, not in the meta for a lot of the reasons why I said Zard struggles. You know, their power spikes don't align with the meta power spikes, but they can be strong. And I think there's some merit in at least putting one of them in the sleeper tier. And I think Greninja is probably the one you're most likely to see. Its level 7 spike is really strong. You know, Surf or Water Shuriken, which is I think would be the preferred moveset, is really good at hitting frontline characters. It can one-shot range characters if you ever get to look at them just straight head on. Just throw a couple stars at them, auto attack them. And double stacking Greninja has had some success in NA, at least in the qualifier tournaments, being, you know, taking down some of the top teams. So I think Greninja deserves to at least not be in the not great tier and maybe in the sleeper tier. ADC Mons require a decent level of skill too. Remember, this is for the regional tournament, okay? This is for this weekend's regional Pokemon Unite Championship Series tournament. You should assume that I'm talking about some of the best players that are playing the game right now. Maybe they're not good enough to play Greninja yet either, but you should assume that this is the best players playing at their best. Why take Water Shuriken over Hyper Voice? So, like I said, it's gonna struggle a lot. Hyper Voice, Sylveon definitely does a lot. The reason why you'd want Water Shuriken Greninja over Hyper Voice Sylveon, though, is because Greninja has access to the backline, right? It can unite in the backline, get its steroid with its attack speed increase, and start chopping away at some really squishy range characters. It has direct mobility as opposed to Sylveon, right? You can double team to dodge, you know, like a Buzzwole combo. You can double team to dodge a Drill Peck that might be coming at you, get out of a feint attack, right? Sylveon doesn't have mobility like that, and Greninja definitely has its niche over it. Is its power spike strong enough to compete? Not always, but sometimes it can. Cinderace, you know, I want to say Cinderace is good. I think it's decent. My prediction is we're not going to see a lot of it in the qualifiers. Not really. I don't think it's going to have success. If it does, I'm willing to be wrong on that. In terms of other characters and other roles, I think Crustle is worth talking about in the sleeper tier. There's a team in Europe that's picked it a lot. I think Zephyr, right? Zephyr are big Crustle players. You'll see some of it in North America too. The reason why I think Crustle is pretty strong right now, or is sleeper at least, is Crustle's good at locking down some of the immobile characters that are in the game. You know, A9, Chandelure, Gardevoir, Venusaur, Espeon. These characters don't have mobility. Pikachu, like all these characters don't have mobility, and the ones that need to step up to cast their moves, they can just get Rock Tombed and then damaged by the other range. They have no way to get out of the Rock Tomb. It's a 60 to 80% slow. It's just really, really powerful. Is it good enough to justify it over some of the other defenders? No, but you know, if you see Lapras and Broband out maybe, and one team takes Trevenant, right? Your options now are Slowbro, maybe Blastoise or Crustle, and you see that they have some range that are really vulnerable to it, and you haven't picked your defender yet. Maybe Crustle's good, maybe not, right? But it's got its niches. Mamo, you know, I'm not a believer in Mamo. I see it get picked sometimes. Maybe it'll be good. I definitely think it's better than some of the characters that might be beside it in its tier, but there's so many other defenders I believe more in that I'm not a big fan of Mamo. Comfey, I'll put it in the sleeper tier. Comfey just got a bug fix last night that allows you to still use your healing spells while Zoroark is using Illusion. And with Zoroark being a meta-defining character and that bug being fixed, I definitely think you could see some Zoroark Comfey pairs. I don't think you'll see Comfey without one of these three characters. You need either Dodrio, Zoroark, or Urshifu to make Comfey work, which are all meta-defining characters. So we might see it, especially if the supports end up getting choked out in the draft. I think Comfey might not be an awful option. And that leaves the rest of them. Where do we want to put these? I think Sword. Sword, we might see some. You know, it's an okay character into some of the metamons. The issue Sword has is that it's really, really bad until you get level 7. And because you're so bad until you get level 7, by the time you hit 7, other characters are also like 7, 8, sometimes 9. And it just doesn't keep up. It doesn't keep up, but it can definitely work. Gudra, I think you'll see some Gudra throughout some of the regions. You might see some Gudra in Brazil. I think you might see some Gudra in NA, maybe EU. Character is like a better version of Tyranitar. It's a really tanky character that needs levels and scaling to do well, but it's got the benefit of slowing and being disruptive at the same time. It's not a defender in terms of typical defenders. It doesn't fit that EXP share bot lane defender role I talked about. It's more that top lane all-rounder or even like central area character. I think all of these characters I'm going to put in the knock rate tab. Like I said, attack damage carry is not really strong. Dragonite's similar to them, but just not strong enough to really get enough value out of it. It is getting buffed, so you might see it after the buffs. I don't really believe in it. You might see 1 or 2 games just because it still has Hyper Beam, but there's better secures that are in the meta. Absol and Gengar, you might see some Absol or some Gengar. I think the other speedster picks are just generally better, but they've got some unique matchups that might make them strong. Particularly Absol isn't awful into Dodrio, but I don't think you'll see a lot of it. The other speedsters are just better at what they do. Serena and Azumarill, these characters are just stat checked mostly by other mons. In Serena's case, it takes you way too long to get scaled up. You have no tools to get ahead, and you absolutely always need to be ahead as this character. And even as ahead, there's other characters that are better at, you know, fulfilling that. If you think about it, like Water Surging Strike Urshifu is just a better version of Serena. You can continuously dive people, you can knock them up, you can sustain, you can take one person out of the team fight. It's just, Serena's just too weak right now. Probably one of the worst characters in the game. Greedent, you know, Greedent's job is to really be like disruptive around the map, be annoying. I think I'll put it in the sleeper tier, to be honest. I think you'll see some Greedent. It's not bad into a lot of the range attackers, but oftentimes it's just a worse Dodrio. If Dodrio is banned or picked out and there's a good matchup for Greedent though, it could definitely get picked. That leaves Zeraora. And this is a character I'm going to put in the sleeper tier. Put it like somewhere in the middle. It's definitely not as good as the other speedsters, but I have faith that this character actually isn't bad. So if there's a team out there that's been practicing Zeraora in one of the regions, I think it's possible you'll see one of the regions have a Zera that looked really strong. It might not be on like might not be on the winning team, but I think this mon is probably being undervalued, and there might be some strategies people are cooking together with Zera. You could put it together with Comfey. Yeah, put it together with Comfey. Discharge Zera with Sweet Kiss is really, really strong still. I think it has some potential. But that's pretty much it. How do we feel about it? I feel like this is a pretty good list. See some people asking why some of these characters are banned. They were either bugged during the qualifiers for the tournament, or they've been released to recently for the qualifiers or for this tournament. So they maintained all the same bans we had for the qualifying stages. Or they're broken Lexation. Agreed? Agreed. All right. Well, this is going to be up on YouTube as well. If there's anyone that's watching on YouTube, you can let us know how you feel in the comments. Reminder for the YouTube chat and the Twitch chat. This weekend, June 10th and 11th, are going to be the regional tournaments for all the Western regions. So North America, Europe, Central America, Mexico, Latin Americas, Brazil, OCE. All the regional tournaments will be held, with the exception of NA, who's going to have their finals be played at a later date in person at NAIC, June 30th, July 1st. So if you guys want to watch me and my team play, we'll be live on the Pokemon Unite channel, June 10th. All we need to do is win 2 sets. If we win out in the group stage, we'll have secured our ticket to Ohio and our ticket to Japan. So big weekend for us. I hope you guys come out and watch. I even told my mom. My mom's going to be watching. So if you guys are in the Twitch chat, if you write hi Ender's mom, my mom might see it, you know? She'd probably like that. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.